and the children had come from both. But soon after she had married his grandfather, the animals they had survived on had disappeared. The land should have been far enough from the ocean, but the pollution had finally reached them. The people had moved, seeking a place far from the ocean and from where cocoon had fallen. It had been in the middle of that journey when his grandmother had seen mountains so tall they seemed to reach the heavens. In their new home, his grandmother had given birth to a son. 2 years later, she had given birth to a girl as well, but the girl had died before she could walk. The animals had vanished from that land too, and the people had moved again. Grandfather had died on the journey. He fought to the last to help people escape from a herd of monsters. After great suffering, the people had arrived in a land where they would build this village, and then within not even a few years, the animals here had disappeared too. But there was nowhere else to move to. Monsters were the only things left to hunt now. The toxic substance that spread when cocoon fell were not all that threatened the lives of the humans and animals. Dust made of crystal particles, finer than sand, would enter their lungs with every breath, building up and make them sick. Back when there had still been hospitals, maybe they would have been able to treat it. But now they couldn't even get any decent medicine. They could do nothing but keep the sick warm and lay them down to rest. All the children were telling her to lie down because there existed no other method for healing. Even the young ones knew that. I'll be alright. Thank you for worrying. But let's continue with the class. You got to study while you still can. I could spend the whole day indoors like this, only when bad weather kept them from hunting. Otherwise, only very small children or those too sick to join in would stay home for the hunt. The people back then were all so stupid, huh? The people back then were also stupid, huh? Yeah. They got to survive, and they even had farms, and then they wasted it all. They should have moved all that nasty waste stuff somewhere else before cocoon fell. They should have gotten rid of the town right under cocoon and moved far away from it too. The four children all offered their opinions, but grandmother shook her head. Now, that's something we can say because we know what came of those decisions. I don't think the people back then even knew when Cocoon would fall. Imagine if someone told you to get out of your house right now because they plan to destroy your town for a coming disaster, but they can't even tell you when that disaster will be. How many people do you think would be able to do that? Though the children fell silent for just an instant, they quickly opened their mouths again. But they knew it had happened one day, right? If they knew it was gonna happen, then I think it was really stupid not to do anything. Our lives are so hard now, 'cause they were all a bunch of idiots. It makes me so mad. Now he could no longer remember what expression his grandmother had worn, but he did remember her chuckle as she replied, "Maybe so." Was her smile a very acknowledgement of the truths spoken by those children, or was it simply sad? Whichever one was, that had been their final class. Beginning with the day after that, they'd had constant good weather. So the children had gone out hunting with the adults. If they were old enough to study, they were old enough to help on the hunt too. By the time hunting was cancelled again because of bad weather, his grandmother couldn't get up anymore. He was no longer a child who would cry and ask her not to die. He'd started going out on hunts, and he'd witnessed the deaths of both monsters and people. What he had learned from this was that humans were far weaker than monsters. Humans died easily, astonishingly so. He'd seen adults die. He'd seen children die, even if they didn't want to, even if they struggled to live on. Death still came for them. But though he understood this, he couldn't accept it. Even though his grandmother had lived longer than most, that was still no reason for her to die. "I'm not a grown hunter yet, Granny. You promised, didn't you? You said you'd try your best to live until I'm a grown hunter." Her apology was terribly hoarse and weak, aside from those who were killed by the monsters. The majority died from illnesses. He understood how much longer his grandmother had to live, no matter how much he hated that he did. He regretted saying something that would do no good. He really shouldn't have said that, but it was too late. But he was barely young enough that the mistake would be forgiven. The truth comes when everyone has forgotten you. As long as you live on in the memory of just one person, you will never die. So don't forget me or any of the others, she told him. This all in one breath, which must have exhausted the loss of her strength. She fell asleep and then never opened her eyes again. Back when he'd still been able to remember the number of days it had been since he'd left on this journey, he found the remains of a village rotten nearly to pieces. Considering how many days it had taken to get there, this had to be the village where his father was born. When he'd seen the buildings from a distance, but his search was vain. His one success was that he found that the water in the old well was not yet dried up. He hadn't much wanted to drink river water, so it was a blessing, however small, to find safe well water. But even so, for caution's sake, he killed a Xlll-2 and burnt its legs black. He killed a Xlll-2 and burned its legs black to make a powder. If you pour that powder into water, mixed it well, and left it for the night, the toxins would sink together with the